are with Brian Sollis talking about creativity and its enemies, because it's very fun, it's nice, it's amazing to talk about how to lead a creative life when everything around you starts off conspiring against it. So I would like to start with your background, your analysis of the digital world, and how, if this is my personal perception, I see many of the creativity ideas sound great, but sound unfeasible in this crazy world we live in. So I would like to start with your intake on this.
Wow, well, I have to say that that your energy is amazing. I feel it coming through the screen. So thank you. This is exciting. All right, well, I'll tell you a little bit about my background so that it makes sense to the question that you're asking. For about 20 years or so, I have been a digital anthropologist, and that means that I have studied technology, specifically disruptive technology, emerging technology, and its impact on business, its impact on markets, and its impact on humanity, society, in a variety of contexts, whether that is a consumer or whether that's as an employee, whether that's as just a human being. So I've published research, I've published many books on the subject over the last couple of decades. And when it comes to creativity, I think there's little c creativity and there's big C creativity. And the difference between the two is Van Gogh or John Lennon are big C creativity. But little c creativity, people like me. I'm not an artist. I'm just someone who wants to practice being creative, maybe singing, maybe drawing.
Let me see if I get it. Let me see if I get it. Big C creativity gets you killed. Either by yourself, like Van Gogh, or by some crazy man in the streets, like John Lennon. It doesn't seem very exciting to me.
Well, it's certainly. Oh wow! It certainly means you're adored in a different level, or not. But the point is that the more you practice creativity, the more you feel creative. The more you feel creative, the more that it affects your thinking, it affects your behavior, it affects your attitude, and so those are all key attributes of someone who needs to stand out in a society that's increasingly being consumed by digital, whether that's social media, whether that's gaming, whether that's apps, whether that's consuming content, whether that's the endless scroll. We're sort of getting into this, like Netflix documentary calls it, a social dilemma, where we need to be in control of our life. We need to be in control of our world. And the more that we practice creativity, that means the more that we're also practicing individuality, we're practicing originality, and we're practicing sort of self-expression, which actually makes us more creative. And there's so many benefits to creativity that I'm sure we'll get to, but that's one of the things that I spent the last few years on studying, which was how do you as anyone become more creative? Oh, look at that. To get your life in a direction where you can be more innovative, where you can also be happier, where you could be more positive, and be essentially a leader in a next generation society that is overconsumed by digital.
But when I hear these kind of comments, my biggest fear on it is that it can get you some sort of victim blaming, in meaning that you need to focus, you need to stand aside out of society, and if you can't, well, then that's your fault. You need to. It's just like fake news. When we talk about fake news, people always love to say that you need to develop some sort of way to filter the news, but you're blaming the victim. How can we develop these kind of creative practices without feeling guilty that we can't do to all this structure?
And that's a really big question. You know, fake news fake news is by design. You know, I should start by saying that. Uh, One of the things that I studied before I studied creativity was what were the effects of the design techniques that go into human transformation. So it's called persuasive design. There's a series of techniques that are all meant to change behaviors. And let's just assume that networks, gaming companies, device manufacturers, let's just say that there was nothing diabolical about what they were trying to do. They were just trying to get your attention. But what they didn't study was what were the longer term effects of those changes. So they rewire your brain, they rewire your body. But for the person who is absolutely mindful about how to change behavior, you can also use it for evil. It's the only way I can describe it. But fake news is the design of people trying to manipulate information to change your mind. And that is not unlike what we saw, for example, in the early days with ISIS and social media, where they used information as a weapon. They used social media as a weapon, and it was all meant to radicalize you, whether that was to recruit you or to change your perspective on, for example, the United States. And that is what's happening in politics all around the world today. That same technique, that same intention is actually being used to create fake news, to the point where fake news actually becomes truth to someone else. And why is that? Why are we so ready to be convinced? How is it that someone who is of sound mind and let's just say body is able to be radicalized in such extreme fashion? Well, a lot of this caters to or plays to the internal cognitive biases that you already have. So when I can stoke that, and I can stoke that because I know what it is, because, for example, Facebook's data set is incredibly rich and can be used for good and bad. But what we've seen over the last 5-6 years, it's not been used in the most positive sense. But what we've also learned is that, for example, extreme news or fake news is actually 6 times more viral than the truth. And so that means you have a system, plus you add to it the algorithms that want to increase engagement and ends up increasing engagement around false information or fake news or polarization or radicalization. You end up with a society disrupted. And when you have, say, Facebook or any platform that doesn't want to take a stance against that, you leave it to fester and propagate on its own merits. And what we're already seeing is that as humanity, as a society, we are not trained or ready to accept this level of responsibility. So creativity, just to kind of bring it back real fast, creativity is the positive side of this conversation, where if you and I can be inspired around being our best self and giving our best self to the world, regardless of where it's polarized, then perhaps we can be contagious. And if nothing else, we can actually live a better, happier life because we're doing what we believe is the right thing for us.
Yeah, because the thing that scares me on this is that there's no true, let's say, milestone, reference point when you're talking about leading a creative life. And most of the creative people, they feel sort of insecure and they don't feel they are in the right place. And if you get, let's say, the hurt, everyone gets informed by social media and gets in the rat race, they are very sure of themselves. So imagine that someone who's uncomfortable in this position and wants to be creative, but you are uncomfortable in something that's very solid, and you want to be in a place that there's no guiding light. They just feel sort of lost. Most creative people don't seem to explain well what do they feel. They just feel it. And I imagine not the ones who are truly creative, and not even someone like you, but someone who's trying to get in this path. And the path seems, let's say, twisted and foggy.
Well, I didn't have clarity on my path at the beginning, and nor did I have it when I started writing Life Scale. In fact, I was trying to write another book when I got to Life Scale. Oh yes, the journey. That is the journey.
Yeah.
That is the journey that I learned how to get on the path to clarity, right? And I think this is what's really important, is that in a world of digital distractions, in a world where we're being rewired, maybe even against our own will or consent, you have to take a step back, and you have to kind of remind yourself, why are you here? What is that dent that you want to make in the universe? One of the biggest lessons that I learned when I started to reflect on my relationship with digital and my relationship with just society at large was that I wasn't living the life I thought I was living. Because that's how much digital changes you. You think your center of reference is here. So you're making your decisions based on where you think you are, your values, your beliefs, your aspirations, your morals. But it turns out that when you lead an active digital lifestyle, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, you name it, you're actually moving as you do it. And so every time you make decisions, you're not making it from where you think you are. You're actually making it from this new life that you're living that you don't even maybe realize that you're living, right? Sort of that, I call it that aspirational selfie. That life I live online is not necessarily that life I live in the real world, but the more I live life online this way, maybe I start to live this way. But that actually changes your values, your beliefs, and your morals. And what's really important is that the journey that you just shared, let's see if I can find it. This is a brand new book because the pages are still stuck together.
I'll just switch a little the lights here because they seem to be very... okay, now I can see you better because I couldn't see you. There's so many lights. But let me get to the point that you were talking about. See, let's say someone thinks he's very centered and knows where he is in the society. David Hume used it to say that we look at the mirror and we see ourselves 10 years younger than we are. And someone is in... Brian? Hello to me. Hello. So someone is in this twisted values, twisted beliefs, and twisted morals, just like you said, and he doesn't even know. So I want you to explain a bit about your journey, and how can this be some sort of inspiring to someone who's trying to get into one?
Okay, well, I'll share just the truth, which was I didn't know I was not on the right path until I was trying to write another book and I was stuck. I couldn't really focus or get into deep flow or deep creativity. I thought it was writer's block or just being too busy, which, that's partly what it was too, but it's something deeper. I also started to look around me and realize that every aspect of my life, my relationships with loved ones and friends, wasn't what I told myself it was. And I could actually watch the state of everything's just sort of deteriorating. And that was because I was placing my time and energy in places that I thought were of greater value than actually were. And this had to do with my center of reference moving. So I didn't have a book in mind. I just needed a solution to write that other book. So I did a lot of research about, how did I get here? And that's when I uncovered all of the things that we're seeing, for example, in Social Dilemma, the design techniques, persuasive design, intermittent variable rewards meant to sort of reward you for, giving your attention to these devices. I learned the effects that it has on our brain. So neuroplasticity, sort of how it rewires our brain to be open to distractions. And the more you do that, you start to multitask, right? And signs of this, you can see like how many tabs do you have open on your browser? How many things, files do you have on your desktop? All right. And what we're really starting to see is that we're not diving deep into one thing. We're sort of skimming the surface of many things. Well, over the years, that robs you of creativity, that robs you of individuality and originality, that robs you from all of the things that allow you to be your best, truly best self. So once I found that out, I also, just on a quick subject aside, I also found out that those were that's when I found out the same design techniques for fake news and radicalization. So I decided to then say, what do you do about that? Because meditation, Burning Man, the Calm app, those things don't fix you. They help you in the short term. So what if I stopped using this? What if I deleted all my apps? Yeah, those are temporary solutions too. So the answer to your question, this personal journey then became, how do I fix my life in the absence of information? Because all of this was so new. And it turns out that journey that you shared in the book, those are the lessons in life that my research led me to actually becoming part of the solution. Everything that didn't work didn't make the book. But when I realized that there was a map and I had a solution and I was starting to transform my life in a much more positive direction, one where I knew I wanted to be, where I wanted to go, who I wanted to be when I got to key steps along the way, I realized that there was nothing out there that could help other people like me. So that's when I went to the publisher and I said, hey, you know that book I was supposed to be working on? How about we take a break from that and we do this? And that's the name I gave it, Life Scale, which was scaling your life toward an intentional destination, because you are taking a moment to define and accept where you are and where you are not, so that you can work your way towards that new goal. And lastly, creativity turned out to be the thing that helps rewire your brain faster in this new direction. It gives you a sense of purpose, not just a sense of aspiration, but the skills you need to be you.
It's funny because many things popped up when you started talking. First of all, you made some references to a very famous creativity book and a thinker that everybody knows, and you probably read him, and nobody can pronounce his name. It's Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, talking about flow and creativity. And it's funny because it's a 1970s, 1980s book. It doesn't reflect the age. You read a book and say, okay, I need to find the flow state, but the flow state is impossible to find with a crazy smartphone popping all the time. And it's funny because diving deep, and again, the idea of diving deep against skimming. And when you find flow, you dive deep and it's wonderful. But again, your phone keeps on call you back. Hey, come back. I remember that film, that old film, Somewhere in Time. Christopher Reeve is really deep in a romance, and then he looks at a coin and whoop, he gets pulled off the dream, and it feels like this all the time. But there's one thing that you said that I believe that's a misnomer, or I think that you don't mean exactly that. And you said that you had to rebuild your life with the absence of information. But I don't think that you rebuild your life with the absence of information. I believe that there's a word lacking here. You rebuild your life with the absence of useless information. Because your life is built on information.
I think it's a matter of finding out what information is important to you. If you look at, for example, politics today, you see people arguing over basically the stupidest things. And it's when you really think about it, where your life is and where your life is going, who you provide for or who you're being provided by, those things are relatively small in comparison to life's bigger issues, right? So it's really about diving deep into the things that are going to help you get to where you want to be. When you referred to flow, it's by the way, for those paying attention to who we're talking about or who don't know who we're talking about, it's Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And the only reason I know how to say his name is because I actually read the audio for my book, and so I had to learn how to say it correctly. When we talk about flow, what we're talking about is if you look at any Olympic athlete, if you look at a professional surfer who conquers an 80-foot wave, if you watch Tony Hawk on a half pipe skateboarding, they are in a deep flow state. They don't actually even realize that they are in the middle of surfing an 80-foot wave or in the middle of a 720 twist. They're doing what they can because they're absolutely focused on doing just that. It takes you to a whole nother state of being. And so whether you achieve that flow state or you just allow yourself sustained focus for whatever it is, creativity or expression or what have you, you're actually releasing all kinds of chemicals in your body and your brain that are actually good for you, whereas these things are not. They're robbing you of the things that are good for you, which is why sometimes you feel depressed, sad, lonely, etc.
That reminded me of Michael Phelps. Every time he went to the swimming pool, he was with a huge headphones and sort of, it was easy to see that he wasn't there. There was an Olympic swimming pool, people cheering about, and he was just in another place. And then he took them off, and he entered the swimming pool, and we realized that. But I want you to give us some spoilers, because it sounds magical. It sounds magical to, okay, I will give up the phone, and I will start. So give us some spoilers, because from what I could get out of you is that creativity is much more of, let's say, a place that we can get to, a skill that we can develop, than to some sort of divine intervention. So if this is, but it is sold and it's seen just like a talent, something that's magical. So how? Give us some spoilers. How can someone who is unhappy, unsatisfied with their life or with their social media presence, how can we give us some tips?
I'll give you what I can without giving it away, because part of the life scaling journey is actually to go through the journey, and it's not easy. I'll just be honest, but you become better, and you become richer in life just by going through the process and realizing the things you couldn't see or feel before. One thing that I will say as sort of a spoiler as an outcome is that the more you practice creativity, the more it becomes a fountain of youth, quite literally. In fact, science shows that in nursing homes and caregiving homes, that they are teaching older people how to dance, how to sing, how to be more artistic, because it actually finds that it makes them healthier, which, I'll take it. I'll practice it. I can't sing, I can't draw, I can't paint, but just the acts of practicing that is actually healthy for you. Now, so the spoilers, the tips that help you, is that you realize, of course, that I'm not asking you to not use digital. I'm not asking you to throw away your phone and to delete apps. What I am asking you to do is to learn the first chapter of the book just teaches you how technology is controlling us today and what that's doing to us. So I am asking you to say, what if you could live with this and be better than you are today, and also better than without it? So almost like this hybrid digital analog future of you. Because, right, look, the truth is when you're using these devices with intent, like I need to get information, I need to create, I need to share, it's exponentially better. So what we have to first accept, and here's the tip, what you first have to accept is just how much technology is actually controlling you. And one of the exercises that I teach at the beginning of the book is to practice yourself up to flow. And the way to do that is start by controlled focus. You're not going to be amazing the first time you do it, but it's about developing a discipline. So, for example, we could use the Pomodoro technique, which is a tomato timer, or you could use it's called Be Focused Pro. You focus for 25 minutes, disruption free. No bathroom, no email, no social media, no text messaging or notifications. You turn it all off and you focus on a task for 25 minutes. So, for example, when I have to write an article, I will turn on this timer and I will focus on that article for 25 minutes. After 25 minutes, you can take a 5-minute break. Then you go back at it. And over time, you could expand that. They show good flow states as being about an hour and a half of focus. Sometimes I do that. For most of my work, I'm in 25-minute bursts. But here's the test at the beginning. You will not make it to 25 minutes before you get distracted. You won't even make it to 5 minutes. You will reach for your phone. You will open up social media. You will respond to a text. You will send a text, and you will justify it to yourself by saying, I need to do this before I forget about it. But the reality is that it's our muscle memory, it's our behaviors, it's our routines, it's our patterns. They're all a mess, and we have to bring them back into focus. And by getting to 25 minutes with practice, you'll actually be able to start reading the book. The book is intentionally designed to be focused in shorter attention spans, but as you practice the techniques that are taught in the book, you actually get to go deeper and deeper and deeper and focus longer as you get to the end of the book. You become better as you read.
It's funny because when you're talking about you justify it to yourself, it reminded me of the last cigarette, one more cookie, another glass of wine, and you just start to develop lots of excuses for yourself. And it was just this time, just this once, and of course, people. And it's funny because when I've seen the layout and the design of your book, it reminded me of a kind of book that's completely different. It's there's a collection from the O'Reilly Publishing Company focused on giving people skills, programming skills. So it's a very technical programming book, but it's a series called Head First. And it's a series that you look at it, at first you can't take it seriously because there's so many drawings, so many colors, so many things. And it starts by explaining, hey, that's on purpose. I'm giving you this because you need to work with your whole brain and not with only part of it. When you give someone a very boring book with lots of printed words, people stop, they get bored and they stop reading, they stop paying attention. So I believe that your design grabs the attention almost all the time. I would like to get one thing better developed here, is that the idea of scale. Because scale is a word that has so many meanings that I would like to understand your take on scale and what do you mean by life scale? Because it could be something to, let's say, I need to lose some weight, so I'm going to a life scale and measure myself.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right, before I answer that question, I want to share a little secret with you. So going back 2 books ago to this called What's the Future of Business, aka WTF, and then to X, the experience when business meets design.
That's the one that made me fall in love with you, man. You're guilty.
For example, this is a table of contents. It's not a table of contents at all. It's an emulation of your home screen on your phone. You don't have to read the book left to right. You could actually read it in the color-coded designs that it was meant to be in. And the reason why I did that, and then also with life scale, some of these designs here that I'll show you, that they're sort of meant to essentially emulate the experience you have on this device so that it's much more familiar. So you essentially, I call it an analog app. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm taking the persuasive design techniques of digital and using them in a positive and productive sense to get you to not only enjoy what you're reading, but to remember what you're reading and feel good about it. So that was the design technique going into this. And so to answer your question, then what does it mean to scale? What does it mean to life scale? If you wanted to lose weight, this book is part of that vision that you could have, because it's helping.
This scale.
It's because it's helping you get to a place where you see yourself being better or greater or more creative, and so that's what scale means. It's having a growth mindset, not a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset is really what holds us back. But when we look at one of the pillars of creativity, of creativity and innovation, it's really about having a growth mindset, believing you can do something, and even if you don't know how to do it, you learn your way forward. And one of the beautiful things about learning your way forward is you're unlearning the things that are actually holding you back, that you didn't even realize were holding you back.
Wonderful. Okay. Now it makes a lot of sense. Meaning scaling you up or down depending on your state of mind and state of affairs. And
exactly.
And it's funny because it's a very different book from X, the one I loved, but I have even read the WTF, and they're very different books from this one, because both of them, and I believe that the other ones that preceded them, they are very, let's say, impersonal. Sort of, it feels like a journalistic view, that you are sort of analyzing it from a third-party standpoint, in which you don't get involved in this. And life scale seems completely the other way around. You dive deep in this, and it feels like your blood is in it. So it is such a huge change. What made you do that, and how does it work?
It is my first personal approach to books, and the other ones, they had my blood in them, but they were just much more focused on the deep creativity and analytics of thought leadership, and trying to help invent new ways of thinking. So X was really about introducing the concept of experience design beyond traditional UX and UI, thinking about how do you design the experiences you want people to have, feel, and share. Not unlike, for example, what people will feel when they watch a Disney movie or go to Disney World. That is experience design. But life scale, I didn't know how else to approach it other than to be personal. I felt like that was going to be the most authentic way. If I was going to ask you to come along with me on a journey to change your life, then I better show you how it changed my life. I did every single exercise. Every exercise that's in this book are the exercises that I went through to learn how to do what I was teaching you. So I even share, for example, in the book, what my results as well. And I felt like that was I wanted you to feel like you had a partner in transformation, because change isn't easy. And if you and I were doing it together, then hopefully that would help. But I'll tell you that it's been difficult. You have COVID-19, you have social dilemma coming out, you have Facebook and politics. This book probably should have come out today rather than a year ago or a year and a half ago, because it's more important than ever. Because when you have a world that's shut down because of a global pandemic, you go to this as escapism. When you are polarized on Facebook, we have an election coming up in the United States, you go more and more and more into digital, because it's designed to do that to you. So and then Social Dilemma is really on Netflix, is really getting a lot of popularity, a lot of views. So if you do watch that, do read Life Scale, because it is the solution to what Social Dilemma shows you as the problem.
Yeah, I think I have two questions for you. Let's say that coming to a close. But first is COVID. You talked about COVID is something. It's the elephant in the room. Everything, every transformative product, everything, you can just add COVID to it and then ask. So it's sort of an easy question, sort of a tricky question, but probably you have seen a lot of experience. So you hadn't launched this book today. It was launched in the pre-COVID era. What changed in this meantime?
Well, it accelerated the use of digital for everybody. You had people who were already digital users or digital first people, whether they were young and they were using Instagram or TikTok, or whether they were older like me who used it for Uber, for social media, for ordering food and groceries. So people like me and others, we were part of what I call Generation C, or where the C stood for connected. It was a cross-generational group psychographic. But then COVID, with shelter in place all around the world, or lockdown or quarantine, whatever you want to call it, it forced everybody else to also become digital first. They had no choice. It was the way that they had to stay connected. It was the way that they communicated. It's the way that they ordered food, groceries, and supplies. And so once you start to go down that path, you become a digital first persona, which means that I call us accidental narcissists, because the world sort of revolves around you. You want things faster. You're impatient. You want people to like everything that you share. You want to be more, you want greater attention around what you do. You pay greater attention to what other people are doing, and you start to change as a human being, kind of going back to what we were talking about with life scale. So COVID has sort of accelerated a lot of these digital behaviors. In the world of business, we've seen 10 years of e-commerce growth happen in 3 months. Exceptional. We've seen 75% of consumers try new brands in 3 months, and 60% of them, 60% saying that they're not going back to their old brands. So essentially, you see digital disruption happening on every front because COVID forced lifestyle changes. And why this is important, and why I wish LifeScale it was coming out now. Not that it, you could still buy it, but it only takes 66 days of consistent change to make new behaviors second nature or automatic, right? So if you are spending more time in digital in a negative capacity, then that means you've created new negative behaviors in your life that will not be fixed unless you, one, recognize them, and two, fix them.
But is it easier or is it more complicated to start on this kind of journey in COVID social isolation times? Because it feels to me that we're social beings, so we always depended on the people we live with. And you can be a digital native or you can be an old analog person, but anyway, you met people. You went to the streets, and now you are isolated at home. And this, like you said, all the social media became more and more and more important. So is it easier or is it more complicated to start on your journey, considering these weird times that we're living in?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be different for everyone. If I had made an assumption, it could be great because you could isolate yourself and allow yourself not to be, for example, influenced by FOMO, or the fear of missing out, right? Where you see all your friends doing all of these amazing things because everybody's isolated. So I now say that instead of meaning finally over missing out, it now means finally over missing out, where you can spend time with yourself and be better because you're not being pulled in other directions. So, with that, I'm an optimist. I actually believe that this might be a better time to figure out how you want to come out of COVID being a better you.
It makes a lot of sense because when you think about great thinkers, most of them, including religious figures, they spend some time alone before making the big transformation in their lives. When we're talking about, let's say, the prophets of the biggest religions, and even philosophers, mathematicians, writers, all of them spent some time alone before doing the big many things. Let's say Proust became ill before writing his magnum opus, and Jesus Christ went to the desert. So that's a lot of examples of people going alone, even forced or voluntarily, but they went alone and they start to think about it. It can be very, very useful. But another thing that I would like to ask you is that we all know that books are done deals. Once you've written the book's over, and then we start all the industrial process of being printed, being reviewed, or being corrected, fact-checked, all these things. And you started on a journey. In journeys, they have a starting point, and most big philosophical journeys don't have an end point. But how long have you been in your journey? Because if the book is sort of less than 2 years old, how long is your journey now?
Yeah, well, the book itself, after being released, is a little over a year, but before that was a good about 2.5 years. One year of research on studying the effects of technology on us. So whether that is as a human being, and also as a matter of information warfare. So I also studied the weaponization of social media. Then another year to figure out a solution to actually work, because there's a lot of things that don't work. And then since the year that the book has been released, I've been creating a course. If you go to lifescaling.me, it is a course for coaches to learn how to take the teachings and the exercises from LifeScale to help other people go through the LifeScale process who don't necessarily have the strength or the time to do it by themselves. And then I'm giving those courses to coaches so that they can so that they could take it and scale it on their own, so that I don't have to be Mr. LifeScale. Everyone can be someone who can. Hey, how honest of an answer do you want? I could, I'll tell you that, ironically, the book actually won best self-help book of the year, and I, I I didn't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. I can only
Yeah,
tell you this, that as a digital anthropologist and as a futurist, the book is in research and
yeah,
deep in practice. So if it helps you help yourself, then in that regard, it's self-help. But because it's a research-based approach to transforming your own behavior, it's essentially much more aligned with the digital side of change, because what makes these things so addictive uh, are the same things in a good way that went into this book. That those practices get you out of the bad behaviors and into the good behaviors. So you're rewiring yourself. I will tell you that after the book came out, the world wasn't sure how to see me anymore. Am I now a self-help guru, an analyst, digital anthropologist, and futurist? And it did affect a lot of things. For example, it's a topic that wasn't necessarily big on the keynote stages around the world, like some of my other topics that I study and work on.
you that on a journey that's sort of transformative, and everyone who makes this kind of journey start to be a little preachy. It is obvious. Say I like my car, I'll start to preach about it. Let's say like the iPhone fans and all this kind of stuff. It's normal. But I believe that your background helped you a lot and got you to this kind of, let's say, distancing. That even it is something for yourself that you've made, you still keep distanced, and this sounds very good. Well, we're getting to the end of the interview. I would just like to ask you for some final remarks, some other than buy my book, because these are obvious. So I would like to give you some, let's say, how can someone start on a kind of a transformative journey that can make them more creative?
I'll leave you with this. Whether we're talking about corporate innovation or innovation in government, education, politics, or healthcare, all innovation has to start with you. It has to start somewhere, usually here and here. So that's a decision you have to make for yourself, is how willing are you to change? Because we live in a time where there's artificial intelligence, machine learning, robots that are learning how to do everyday jobs, even the white collar jobs. So this actually is a time for personal disruption. This is a time for unlearning and learning. This is a time for reskilling and empathy. All important human attributes today that contribute to what I call the human quotient, where that humanity within each of us allows us to actually be greater as an individual and greater as a society. So the more we are open to insights, whether they're from 1,000 years ago or from today, the more we can interpret them in our own way and have a positive impact in our life and in the lives of those around us. I mean, we're one. We're at a time of great disruption in terms of a pandemic, but also in terms of great disruptions in terms of technology. 10 years from now, we'll see quantum computing becoming a reality. So there's a lot of change coming. So the better we get at learning and unlearning and practicing openness and mindfulness, and also seeing ourselves through a creative lens, the better we'll be.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Brian, and it was lovely talking to you. I wish I had say a whole week to talk to you. And well, in half of the Criativar event, I thank you again, and I'll ask you if people have some kind of specific questions, if you can post some links or added material so people can get in touch with you and with your book.
Well, they could go to briansollis.com or whatever social network you're on. It's probably at Brian Sollis, and you can say hello to me there, and I'll make sure to reply.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I enjoyed this thoroughly, and thank you everybody for watching. We'll learn and grow together.
Thank you.